Radio Network talk show host Hugh Hewitt. He worked in the Reagan administration for 6 years. And CNN's chief political correspondent, Dana Bash. I will follow up and guide the discussion. Candidates, I'll try to make sure each of you gets your fair share of questions. You'll have 1 minute to answer questions and 30 seconds for follow-ups and rebuttals. I'll give you time to respond if you have been singled out for criticism. We have timing lights that are visible to the candidates. Those lights will warn them when their time is up. Our goal tonight is to have a true debate, candidates actually addressing each other in areas where they disagree, where they differ on policy, on politics, and on leadership. Now that everyone is in place, it's time for the candidates to introduce themselves to our audience. Please keep it brief. Governor Pataki, you're first.
Thank you, Jake. Hi, I'm George Pataki, and I am honored to be here this afternoon with all of you at the Reagan Library. You know, when I think of Ronald Reagan, I think of his tremendous smile, a smile that reflected his optimism and his unending belief and faith in America and in Americans. And it was that belief in America that led to a great presidency, a presidency that led to decades of safety, security, and prosperity for America. That's exactly the type of leadership we need in Washington today. And that's why I'm running for President of the United States. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rick Santorum. Some of you may know me because I led the fight to end partial birth abortion. Some of you may know me because I led the fight to end welfare as we know it, put people back to work, reduce poverty, and reduce the federal budget. Some of you may know me because I successfully put sanctions on the Iranian nuclear program in Congress over opposition of both parties initially. But hopefully most of you know me most because I'm the proud father of 7 children, with particularly a special little disabled girl who is the heart and core of my heart, and married to a wonderful woman named Karen for 25 years who is the love of my life.
Hi, I'm Bobby Jindal. Now look, I don't have a famous last name. My daddy didn't run for president. I don't have a reality TV show. I'll tell you what I do have. I've got the backbone, I've got the bandwidth, I've got the experience to get us through these tough times, to make sure that we don't turn the American dream into the European nightmare. Thank you for having me today.
One, thanks CNN for having people at this debate. I'm Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, in case you can't tell. I want to thank Ms. Reagan for inviting me. It means the world to me. I'm the only candidate tonight who served in the military while Ronald Reagan was our president and our commander-in-chief. It's one of the highlights of my life. I'm running for president to destroy radical Islam, to win the war on terror, to protect you and your family. And in that quest, I have an uncompromising determination to win this war, just like President Reagan had an uncompromising determination to destroy the evil empire and win the Cold War. Above all others on both sides of the aisle, I am most qualified to be Commander-in-Chief on day one. 33 years in the Air Force, 35 trips to Iraq and Afghanistan. I understand this war. I have a plan to win it, and I intend to win it.
Thank you, candidates. We're going to talk a lot about policy and your proposals this evening, but first, Governor Jindal, I want to start with you. You have said that the frontrunner, Donald Trump, is a, quote, unstable, narcissistic egomaniac. Now, we are in the house of Reagan, who made famous the so-called 11th commandment, thou shalt not speak ill of thy fellow Republican. What drove you to violate that unofficial commandment?
Well, Jake, I'm in compliance with the 11th commandment, and I would tell my fellow Republicans, let's stop treating Donald Trump like a Republican. If he were really a conservative, and 30 points ahead, I would endorse him. He's not a conservative. He is not a liberal. He's not a Democrat. He's not a Republican. He's not an independent. He believes in Donald Trump. Here's the reality. The idea of America is slipping away. $18 trillion of debt. Planned Parenthood selling baby parts across our country. Our government's creating a new entitlement program when we can't afford the government we've got today. We've got a president who won't even say the words radical Islamic terrorism. He's declared war on trans fats and a truce with Iran. Think about that. He's more worried about Twinkies than he is about the Ayatollahs having a nuclear weapon. That is what is happening. The idea of America is slipping away. We must not let that happen on our watch. We have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to rescue the idea of America, the choice for conservatives. Do we depend on proven conservative principles like Ronald Reagan did? Or do we turn this over to a narcissist who only believes in himself?
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Jake.
Senator Santorum, do you think Governor Jindal is wrong for attacking your party's frontrunner?
I think personal attacks just please one person, Hillary Clinton. And all we do when we go after each other, and we've seen a bunch of it, from people up on this stage, people who are going to be on the stage afterwards, who go after and make personal attacks on people. There are plenty of policy differences between the candidates up here and the candidates later. Donald Trump has every right to run for president as a Republican as anybody else in this audience, and he may have positions that I disagree with. But he has the right to do that, and the people should be given the benefit of the doubt to be able to see through those things. I don't think it helps when Republicans attack Republicans personally. I'll say some things tonight which will be very big differences. The issue of immigration is one that there are huge differences in this field, and I will be out there talking about how we have to control immigration, how we have to look after the American worker. The focus of this debate should be on how we're going to win this election and help improve the quality of life for American workers. And we aren't doing that when we're out there picking at each other and calling each other names. The name we should be calling out is, what are we going to do for average Americans who are losing ground in America today? And that should be our focus.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Jindal, do you want to respond to that?
Absolutely. Look, the reality is Hillary Clinton is gift-wrapping this election to us. They're running their weakest candidate. They've got a socialist that is gaining on Hillary Clinton. Folks, you can't make that up. A socialist is doing well in the Democratic primary. The best way for us to give this election back would be to nominate a Donald Trump. He'll either implode in the general election, or if God forbid, if he were in the White House, we have no idea what he would do. You can't just attack him on policy. He doesn't care about policy. It's not enough to say he was for socialized medicine or higher taxes.
Thank you, Governor.
He's not serious.
And Senator Santorum, just to assure you, we will get to those issues, but just a couple more on this general subject. Senator Graham, you've called Donald Trump a, quote, wrecking ball for the Republican Party. Voters in your home state of South Carolina in a recent poll prefer Donald Trump 30% to your 4%. How do you explain why so many of your constituents would rather have Donald Trump as the Republican nominee than you?
Well, all I can say, if you looked at polling in 2012 and 2008 at this level, we'd have this stage, you'd have President Perry and President Giuliani. We've got a long way to go. And here's what I'm going to try to do tonight, convince you that I'm best qualified to be Commander-in-Chief for the 1% who are doing the fighting for the rest of us. And we're going to have a serious discussion tonight. All of us are going to say we want to destroy ISIL. But here's what I'm going to tell you. What we're doing is not working. I have a plan to do it. If I'm President of the United States, we're going to send more ground forces into Iraq because we have to. President Obama made a huge mistake by leaving too soon against sound military advice. To every candidate tonight, are you willing to commit before the American people that you will destroy ISIL and you understand we need a ground force to do it? Are you willing, Jake? Please ask everybody the following question. Would you go from 3,500 to 10,000 American boots on the ground in Iraq to destroy ISIL? Because if you don't, we're going to lose. Are you willing to send American combat forces into Syria as part of a regional army? Because if you don't, we'll never destroy ISIL in Syria. If you're not ready to do these things, you're not ready to be Commander-in-Chief.
Thank you, Senator Graham. We're going to bring in Hugh Hewitt now, who has a question for Governor Pataki.
Thank you, Jake. Governor, you signed the pledge to support the Republican nominee, and you promptly broke it. by doing so, by tweeting out that you would not support Donald Trump. Have you released Donald Trump to be a free agent again, or anyone else in the field?
No, Hugh, not at all. I have not broken the pledge because Donald Trump is not going to be the Republican nominee, period. Flat out, I guarantee you that. I will vote for the Republican nominee.
You said on Twitter that you would not support Donald Trump. If he's the nominee, will you support him?
He's not going to be the nominee, Hugh. And let me just say one word here. This is an important election with an enormous number of challenges facing the American people. And the first 4 questions are about Donald Trump.
And the fifth one is too. Would you really vote for Hillary Clinton
I would not vote for
over
Hillary
Donald
Clinton.
Trump if he's the nominee?
No, I will vote for the Republican nominee. But let me say this flat out. Donald Trump is unfit to be president of the United States or the Republican Party's nominee. Look at what he did in Atlantic City. He says he's going to make America great again. He invested 4 casinos in Atlantic City, and he said, essentially, I'm going to make Atlantic City great again. Every one of those casinos went bankrupt. Over 5,000 Americans lost their job. And you know people who, in this difficult economic time, have lost their job and the pain that causes. He didn't lose anything. 5,000 lost their jobs. He will do for America what he did for Atlantic City, and that is not someone we will nominate.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
Senator Graham. One of the reasons why Donald Trump, Ben Carson, and Carly Fiorina are doing well is because they are political outsiders. In fact, that's one of the things. There are 2 things that they have in common. They've never been elected to office before, and they're doing better than all of you in the polls. The 4 of you have a combined 7 decades in elected office. Senator Graham, in this election season, do Republican voters see your service in government as a liability and not an asset?
Well, what I hope Republican voters, libertarian, vegetarians, Democrats, you name it, will look for somebody to lead us in a new direction, domestically, but particularly on the foreign policy front. President Obama is making a mess of the world. What I'm trying to tell you here tonight, that Syria is hell on earth, and it's not going to get fixed by insulting each other. I've been there 35 times to Iraq and Afghanistan. I am ready to be commander-in-chief on day 1. I've been in the military 33 years, 140 days on the ground in Iraq and Afghanistan. I am so ready to get on with winning a war that we can't afford to lose. I hope you believe that experience matters. It's an all-volunteer force, folks. When you vote for commander-in-chief, they're stuck with your choice. We've had one novice being commander-in-chief. Let's don't replace one novice with another. And if I thought I could win this war without more American ground forces in Iraq and Syria, I would tell you, but we can't.
Thank you, Senator.
If we don't get on with this, they are coming here.
Thank you, Senator. Let's turn to the topic of immigration. For that, I want to bring in my colleague, Dana Bash.
Senator Santorum, Governor Jindal has supported a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants once the border is secure. Why do you disagree with that?
Well, in fact, just about everybody in this field supports some pathway to citizenship. There are just a few. Governor Jindal, Senator Cruz, Senator Rubio, Jeb Bush, a lot of others, Senator Graham, all support some sort of amnesty at some point in time or another. And this is really the interesting thing about this whole debate. This debate should not be about what we're going to do with someone who's here illegally. This debate should be about, well, what every other debate on every other policy issue is in America. What's in the best interest of hardworking Americans? What's in the best interest of our country? We've had a focus because the other side has set up for us, here is who we have to be concerned about on the issue of immigration. And someone who's here illegally and their family, and what are we going to do about them? A great leader will say that the objective of every law in America is to do what's in the best interest of America. And what's in the best interest of America right now is to look at wages, look at employment among wage earners. 70 to 90% of people who have come into this country, 35 million over the last 20 years, are wage earners that are holding wages down, taking jobs away from America.
Senator, your time's up. I want to get the governor to respond
Dana,
to that.
I want to clarify. I want to make very clear that everybody understands my position is we need to secure the border, period. Any talk of doing any more, we don't need a comprehensive plan. We don't need a 1,000-page bill like the Gang of Eight. We don't need amnesty. Everybody in D.C. talks about it. We need to get it done. As president, I'll get it done in 6 months. It won't be perfect, but we can get it done. I'm not for amnesty. We do need to secure the border. A smart immigration makes our country stronger. Right now, we've got a weak one. One of the things I've said, and I know the left, I know Hillary didn't like this, immigration without assimilation is invasion. We need to insist that people come here legally, learn English, adopt our values, roll up their sleeves, and get to work. We do need to secure the border.
Senator Santorum, do you buy that the governor's not for
Well,
amnesty?
just because you don't call it amnesty doesn't mean that what almost everybody in this field is for is allowing people who are in this country illegally, people who broke the law to come into this country, people who came here legally and overstayed, to stay in America. Again, we have 35 million people. We have the highest percentage of immigrants in this country as far as numbers ever, as far as percentage, the highest in 105 years. Wages are flatlined. The reason that you're seeing the angst and the anger out there and the reason this issue has taken off is because workers in America know that their wages are being undermined. If you look at from the year 2000 to the year 2014, there are 5.7 million net new jobs created. What percentage of those jobs are held by people who weren't born here? The answer is all of them. Okay. The fact is American workers are getting hurt by immigration, and that's why they're upset.
Your time is up. And Governor, I'm sorry, just you really need to clarify your position because you say you're not for amnesty, but you have been for a path to citizenship.
Dan, that's not right. What I've said consistently is secure the border. I've said after that is done, the American people will deal with the folks that are here pragmatically and compassionately. Now, Rick, if he wants to say that Senator Rubio or Jeb or others for amnesty, that's his right. I am not for amnesty. I've never been for amnesty. Will never be for amnesty. Secure the border. We don't need to do that as a comprehensive bill. I've also said we need to put an end to sanctuary cities. It's not enough to defund them. I think we need to criminalize, accuse, and jail those mayors and councilmen as accessories for the crimes committed by people who shouldn't be here in the first place.
Thank you, Governor.
Dana.
I want to change the subject. We're staying on immigration, and I'm bringing you in, Governor Pataki, and Senator Graham, I'm coming to you as well.
Thank you.
Governor Pataki, Republicans right now are debating birthright citizenship, the policy of granting U.S. citizenship to every baby born in this country, even if they are born to undocumented immigrants. Senator Graham wants to end the policy of birthright citizenship. Governor Pataki, you support keeping it. Tell him why he's wrong.
Yeah, it's a small part of a very important issue. And let me comment on what my colleagues were saying here. We all agree you have to secure the border. We have to make sure that people come to America legally. That has got to be step one. Step two is we have to stop releasing criminals into the communities. If you are charged with a crime as an illegal alien, you should either be in jail or be deported. You should not be released, as the Obama administration has done. Of course, we should outlaw sanctuary cities and hold them responsible. But we can't ignore 11 million people who are here. What are we going to do? We're not going to send them back despite somebody saying we're going to drag kids out of classrooms and send them back. But we have to send a message that we are a nation that depends on the rule of law. And when your first act is to break the law, there has to be a consequence. So what I would do is require those who want to have legal status, not citizenship, come forward, acknowledge they broke the law, and if they do it again, they can be immediately deported, and then do what we do in communities across America when we want to sanction someone.
Thank you, Governor.
And that is community service. 200 hours, working in a hospital,
Governor,
working in a school, and then they could have legal status.
What I asked about was about birthright citizenship and why you think that we should preserve birthrights.
I don't think that we should tell that child born in America that we're going to send it back. The way to avoid that is to have an intelligent immigration policy where we know who is coming here, why they are coming here, so we don't have this flood of people coming here for the wrong reason.
Senator Graham, most countries in the world do not have birthright citizenship.
Probably for a good reason.
Why do you think Governor Pataki is wrong?
Well, let's talk about immigration. Number one, I like Rick. I don't remember the Santorum plan when I was in the Senate. The peanut gallery on this is interesting. I have been trying to solve this problem for a decade. There are no Democrats here tonight. If you're here, raise your hand. You went to the wrong, well, welcome. Thank you very much for coming. The bottom line, I'm trying to fix the problem. We're not going to deport 11 million people here illegally, but we will start with felons and off they go. As to the rest, you can stay, but you got to learn our language. I don't speak it very well. Well, look how far I've come. Speaking English is a good thing. You got to pay taxes. You got to pay a fine. You got to get back in line. You've got to secure your border. They'll keep coming. If you don't control who gets a job, it never ends. We've got two borders, one with Canada, one with Mexico. I've never met an illegal Canadian. This is an economic problem. So folks, let's solve it. Amnesty is doing nothing, and that's what we've been doing. As to birthright citizenship, once we clean up this mess, in the future, prospectively, I'm willing to look at the following. There are people buying tourist visas that go to resorts with maternity wards for the express purpose of having a child here in America. They're rich Asians. They're rich people from the Mideast.
Thank you, Senator.
That, to me, is bastardizing citizenship.
Thank you,
yeah,
Senator.
I'd like to stop that in the future.
Governor Pataki, we'll come back to you, Senator
He
Santorum, I
mentioned
promise.
my name and that I didn't have a plan. And the fact of the matter is
all right.
that I did have a plan. Back in 2006, I introduced a plan called a Comprehensive Border Security Bill, which did, in fact, put the resources to build the fencing and deploy the troops and the technology necessary.
What'd you do with the $11 million?
As you know, Lindsay,
What are you going to do with the $11 million?
As you know, 40 to 60% of the $11 million are here on visa overstays. We know exactly who they are. We should know where they are, but we have a government that doesn't tell them to return home. You can solve half of the problem with the $11 million by simply telling the 11 million that they have to return to their country of origin. So that's half your problem.
How many
Now
Democrats
it's not
supported
11
your
million
plan?
anymore.
How many Democrats did you have on your bill?
I don't know how many Democrats I
can
had
tell
on my
you
bill.
none.
But the point is, the point is that I had a bill and
That went nowhere.
Well, you're right, Lindsay. It went nowhere because we had a president back then who was for more comprehensive immigration reform
George
than I
W.
was.
Bush.
That's right.
Who won with Hispanics?
You know what we need to do,
Compared to what
Lindsay,
we're
is
doing.
we need to win fighting for Americans. We need to win fighting for the workers in this
Hispanics
country who are hurting, including
are
Hispanics.
Americans.
The people who are hurt the most by illegal immigration are Hispanics.
In my world, Hispanics are Americans.
The folks who are hurt the worst are recent immigrants. By illegal immigrants coming into this country, last year alone, 700,000 illegal immigrants came into this country. Who do you think are most impacted? It's the folks who came into this country, played by the rules, did what they were supposed to do, came here and went to work, and now they're finding themselves out of work because someone illegally is willing to come in and work for less.
I have a little different take on where the country is going on this issue. Number one, in 1950, there were 16 workers for every retiree. How many are there today? There's 3. In 20 years, there's going to be 2. And you're going to have 80 million baby boomers like me retire en masse wanting a Social Security check and the Medicare bills paid. We're going to need more legal immigration. Let's just make it logical. Let's pick people from all over the world on our terms, not just somebody from Mexico. Let's create a rational legal immigration system because we have a declining workforce.
Thank you, Senator.
Strom Thurmond had 4 kids after he's 67. If you're not willing to do that, we better come up with a new legal immigration system.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Pataki, I want to let you have the final word here.
I just want to say, I have 7 kids. I've done my part.
Oh, he's done his part. Governor Pataki.
We have to deal with the people who are here illegally. We can't just ignore them or send them back. I think my policy would work to give them legal status, make them a part of an economy that will grow and help America.
I want to turn to another pressing immigration issue, Governor Jindal. Over the next year, at least 10,000 Syrian refugees will be allowed to enter the United States. Governor Jindal, you've said it's ridiculous for America to let more refugees in from Syria, and you have expressed concerns about security. Senator Graham says that the United States has a moral obligation to these Syrian refugees. Governor Jindal, does the United States have any obligation to them?
Jake, look, America is the most compassionate country in the entire world. We do more for folks around this world, and that's the nature of the American people. 2 things. 1, let us draw a line, a direct line, between this refugee crisis and this president's failed foreign policy. He drew a red line in Syria and did not enforce it. And now we're seeing millions of refugees potentially, hundreds of thousands going into Europe. The answer is not to put a Band-Aid on this and allow even more people to come into America. We should not short-circuit. We've got a vetting process. We've got a normal refugee process. Simply allowing more people into our country doesn't solve this problem. The way to solve this problem is for us to be clear to our friends and allies that we are going to replace Assad. We're going to hunt down and destroy ISIS. Our friends don't trust us. Our enemies don't fear and respect us. But I want to go back on immigration. Let me be very clear. Immigration, we need to insist on assimilation and integration. My parents came here legally almost 45 years ago. They came here, they followed the rule of law. They knew English. They adopted the values. They didn't come here to be hyphenated Americans. They're not Indian Americans. They're not Asian Americans. They're Americans. It is important we insist on that in immigration going forward.
Thank you, Governor. Senator Graham, your response when it comes to Syrian refugees.
Yeah, number one, how does President Obama sleep at night? Look what you've let happen on your watch. Your commanders told you don't withdraw from Iraq because we'll lose all of our gains. 3 years ago, your entire national security team, Senator McCain and I begged you to do a no-fly zone and help the Free Syrian Army while it would matter, but you said no. I'm not blaming Bobby, I'm not blaming Rick, I'm not blaming anybody. I'm blaming Barack Obama for this mess.
Thank you, Senator. I want to turn now.
And I want to fix it.
We're going to keep talking about the situation in the Middle East. Let me bring in my colleague Dana Bash again.
Thank you. Senator Graham, you mentioned this earlier. You are calling for an additional 20,000 U.S. ground forces to fight ISIS in Iraq and Syria. And you have said, again just this evening, that anyone who's not willing to do that should not be commander-in-chief.
Right.
No one on this stage has gone that far. So are you saying, for Iraq and Syria, are you saying that everybody to your right is not fit for the Oval Office?
I'm saying this, if they don't understand that Barack Obama's policies are not working, that we're not going to destroy ISIL in Iraq and Syria from the air, they are not ready. What have I learned in 35 trips? I learned what works and what doesn't. We were in a good spot in Iraq. President Bush made mistakes, but he adjusted. To those who fought in Iraq, you did your job, and Barack Obama wasted it all. Now we're in a spot where if we don't destroy ISIL soon, they're coming here. There are 3,500 American boots on the ground. You would never know it hearing your president, but we need about 10,000 to turn the tide of battle in Iraq. Then there is nobody left, Dana, to train inside of Syria. We spent $50 million training 54 people, and they're down to 4 or 5. They have been slaughtered, so we're going to need a regional army. The Turks, the Jordanians, the Saudis, the Egyptians, get their armies up together, and 90% of it will be them. They're going to pay for this war because we paid for the last two. But 10% at least will have to be us, and we're going in on the ground, and we're going to pull the caliphate up by its roots, and we're going to kill every one of these bastards we can find, because if we don't, they're coming here.
Senator,
let's get on with it.
Senator Santorum, I know you're raising your hand. You're committing to this number of troops, both in Iraq and on the ground in Syria?
I have proposed 10,000 troops. I did so about 6-7 months ago, that we needed to deploy additional troops to do exactly what Lindsey said, arm the Kurds.
And he's saying 20,000. Would you?
I've said 10,000, and if more is necessary. Look, the answer is this. Once ISIS established a caliphate, the game changed. Because once you establish a caliphate where you have an area of control, you have to take ground from that caliphate. Because if you don't, then in the Islamic world, it's seen as a legitimate caliphate. As long as they have territorial integrity and even expand it, they have legitimacy in much of the Muslim world to call people to join their jihad here in America, as well as in Iraq and in Syria. So we must take their ground.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Jindal?
Look, absolutely. We need to do whatever is necessary to hunt down and kill these radical Islamic terrorists. But this president has helped, his policies have helped to contribute to this problem. He went to the Pentagon the same week they announced they were cutting back the number of troops in the Army to say that we're not going to win this through guns. It's going to be a change of hearts and minds. This will be a generational conflict. That is nonsense. These are barbarians. They are burning, crucifying people alive, Christians and other Muslims. We need to hunt them down and kill them. It starts by having a president willing to call the enemy radical Islamic terrorists.
If I may, does that include American ground forces in Syria as part of a regional army? Are all of you willing to commit to American ground forces going into Syria as part of a regional army to destroy the caliphate at its headquarters?
Governor Pataki?
Lindsey, let me comment on this. Last week was the anniversary of September 11th, and I was governor of New York on September 11th and led us through that horrible day. And I learned that we cannot assume that because radical Islam is a continent away, it doesn't pose a threat to us here in America. It did then, and today I think we are at greater risk of an attack than at any time since. We have got to destroy ISIS's ability to attack us here. But it's not 10,000 troops, it's not 20,000 troops. In my view, it's three things. First, we have to directly arm those fighting ISIS on the ground now.
Thank you, Governor. Sorry, we have rules and timing. Governor Jindal, I do want to bring you in. I want to turn to a story in the news today. A 14-year-old Muslim high school student in Texas was arrested on Monday for bringing a homemade clock to school after it was mistaken for a fake bomb. Police released the young man after they determined it was, in fact, a clock. Today, President Obama invited that student to the White House. Governor Jindal, throughout your campaign, you've spoken many times about Muslim extremists in this country. How would you as president strike a balance between vigilance and discrimination?
Well, Jake, look, I think the American people, we don't discriminate against anybody based on the color of their skin or their creed. I think the way you strike that balance, you say to Muslim leaders, they've got two responsibilities. One, it's not enough to denounce just simply generic acts of violence. They've got to denounce the individuals by name and say these aren't martyrs. These terrorists are not martyrs. Rather, they're going straight to hell. They're not going to enjoy a reward in their afterlife. Secondly, they have to explicitly embrace the same freedoms for everybody else they want for themselves. Look, I know it's politically incorrect to say this. The president says Fort Hood was an issue of workplace violence. We're at war with radical Islam. Our president loves to apologize for America. He goes to the National Prayer Breakfast, brings up the Crusades, criticizes Christians. We're at war today with radical Islamic extremists. It's not politically correct to say that, but the way you strike that balance, you say to Muslim leaders, denounce these fools, these radical terrorists by name, say they're not martyrs.
Governor Jindal, I'm afraid you didn't answer the question. How do you strike the balance between vigilance and discrimination? Obviously, we know how you feel about the vigilance part of this. Do you ever see the discrimination part of it?
Sure. I don't think a 14-year-old should ever get arrested for bringing a clock to school. So if you ask me, am I glad he was released? I'm glad that police are careful. I'm glad they're worried about security and safety issues. Look, in America, we don't tolerate, right now, the biggest discrimination going on is against Christian business owners and individuals who believe in traditional forms of marriage. They're throwing this woman in jail in Kentucky. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the Christian florist, the caterer, the musician who simply want to say, don't arrest us for having or don't discriminate against us, don't shut down our businesses, don't fine us thousands of dollars for believing marriage is between a man and a woman. Let's talk about not discriminating against Christians.
We will get to that subject later in the debate. Senator Graham.
Well, you know, Kim Davis, I'm not worried about her attacking me. I am worried about radical Islamic terrorists who are already here planning another 9/11. We're at war, folks. I'm not fighting a crime. I want to have a legal system that understands the difference between fighting a war and fighting a crime. And here's the reality. Young men from the Mideast are different than Kim Davis. And we've got to understand that.
Thank you, Senator.
Islamic websites need to be monitored. And if you're on one, I want to know what you're doing.
Governor
Jake, if I
Pataki.
can comment on this. Yes, Kim Davis is different from Islamist radicals from the Middle East. But on the other hand, we have one rule of law in America. And an elected official can't say that I'm not going to follow that law if it conflicts with my beliefs. I think she should have been fired, and if she'd worked for me, I would have fired her. We have to uphold the rule of law.
Thank you, Governor.